Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, we're here for another episode of our UNC Basketball ISO Series. We've been doing these kind of throughout the offseason, kind of in three parts, finishing off with these videos that we're doing that we run throughout on the weekend. So we did Puff Johnson last week. If you haven't seen that, go check him out. We've also been doing a lot of other players that are returning to Carolina. And now we're transitioning into the two transfers that have come into the program this year, starting first with Justin Mckoy, which you guys know by the title. It's obviously why you clicked on it. And if you haven't seen, we've also been doing a bunch of UNC football ISO videos as well. So if you haven't seen those, if you just click on our channel, you'll see a playlist with all that, and you can find every single video we've done on football and basketball side included in there. But before we dive into Justin McCoy, AJ, make sure you guys head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com. You can sign up for just $8.33 a month. It's a great opportunity to do it. We've been talking about it a lot, but there's just so much recruiting stuff going on throughout this offseason. So if you want a little bit more behind the scenes, a little bit more of what goes into it, 99% of our recruiting stuff is premium anyway, so you got to be signed up for it to access it, and a ton goes on our board. So get signed up over there. You can find a link in the description below for just $8.33 a month. But AJ, let's dive into Justin McCoy on this one. Obviously a guy that is transferred from the University of Virginia, played 2 seasons there, local to the area, the Raleigh area. Well, went to high school at Panther Creek High. Just I guess probably not too far from where you live, AJ. I know you're a little bit further in Raleigh, so probably not too far from your whereabouts. But obviously Hubert Davis landed him. He's coming to the program, and we're going to just kind of go over him and give our thoughts on what he did at Virginia and kind of look ahead to this season. So looking at his stat line, last year, 11.3 minutes per game, played in 19 games, averaged 3.5 points per. And if you look back at the year before that, his freshman season at Virginia, 7.4 minutes per game in 14 games and averaged just 1 point. So he's a guy that, saw action at Virginia. His numbers obviously jumped a little bit last season in what was a weird year with COVID and everything. But I guess let me ask you this first before we dive into him a little bit more. What were your kind of initial reactions or initial thoughts on a guy like Justin McCoy coming into the program? Because I think from what you've seen and the research you've done, that opinion may have even shifted a little bit to what kind of impact you think he can have on this year's team coming up in particular.
Well, let's remember that he chose UVA initially over Carolina. Mm-hmm. Carolina pushed hard for him in the spring of his senior year. They want another big guy. They want another body, someone who could come in and be a part of the program, probably, 4-year guy, dirty work kind of guy. And that's exactly what UVA got. If you go back and look at some of the things that Tony Bennett said about him last year. He talked a lot about energy and grit, and he brought vitality to the court. And there were times UVA didn't have that, and maybe McCoy played 2 minutes in the first half, and there were 9 minutes left in the game, and Bennett would stick him in there, and he'd play 5 or 6 minutes and give them a jolt. He would produce by grabbing some missed shots. He hit a couple buckets. He cut really well. A lot of his baskets were layups after cuts. A lot of his baskets were attached to assists. So he got himself open, made himself available, and he turned some games around. He was on the floor several times in some big second half stretches for UVA last year, in which they turned a close game where they were trailing or turned a close game into either taking a lead or building a little bit of a cushion. So the guy that we thought Carolina was getting when this was announced back in April was a guy who would at least get given an opportunity, smart kid, got a little bit of experience. If you can handle Tony Bennett the way he does things for 2 years, You're coachable and you can handle a lot of stuff. So since then, I've learned a lot more about his game. I've watched a lot more of what he does, and I think he can be an extremely useful player for the Tar Heels, someone who I don't think it would be fair to place really high expectations on, simply because I'm not a big fan of saying this guy is going to do something that we haven't seen him do yet before, or a team, for example. But I do think that there is definitely an opportunity for Justin McCoy to really help this basketball team.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at his just kind of height and weight, for instance, 6'8", around 215. I mean, that's a great body size you can work with. And he's obviously a guy that can kind of, can go down low but can also step out a little bit. And if you look at his numbers at last year at Virginia, he was a relatively efficient kid. I know he only averaged 3.5 points per game, but 48.3% from the field shooting, 80% from the free throw line. That was over a 14% jump from his freshman season. And his freshman field goal percentage was 38.5%. So a 10% jump between those two in terms of his freshman to his sophomore year, and all did it in 11.3 minutes per game. Also shot 33.3% from field 3-point land, excuse me. So, looking at those numbers, relatively efficient guy, also averaged 3.3 rebounds. So you're talking about a guy that when he did shoot last year, nearly 50% of the time it wasn't going in.
A lot of it were those buckets I was talking about.
Yep.
He cut, in that offense, think about watching UVA play.
Yeah.
They want to hit three, they want to shoot threes, they want to get cuts to the basket. They're very patient. They learn how to drag your defender off of other guys and get yourself open. So you have to learn the basics, and you have to perfect the basics in order to function with what the Wahoos do. So a lot of his baskets were also in an offense in which they're not going to put up 65 shots a night.
It's not like Carolina now.
So to me, the statistics are okay to look at, but that's why I wanted to watch film. I wanted to watch how he functioned in the unit out there, and that's why I really like what he can be at North Carolina. I don't think he's going to go out and get 20 and 10 for you, but he's someone that can spell at the 4 and 5. He can handle some things in a positionless type offense, which we're going to see more of from North Carolina. And he's a guy who could sit on the bench and then get inserted into a tense situation at Notre Dame and play a prominent role in them going from a 2-point lead to a 12-point lead in a 5-minute span. And for UVA, when they build those double-digit leads inside the last 10 minutes of games, that was them putting their foot on the throats of the other team. And he played that role. A couple other things. He started 4 times last year. And I think there were matchups. There were some games he played more because of his matchups that he would be able to help them with. Some games he didn't play as much because maybe he wasn't going to be as effective in those situations. But in the last 4 games of the season, he averaged 17 minutes a game, and he scored 18 points and had 18 rebounds. He did not play in their NCAA tournament game against Ohio because he tested positive for COVID. So his playing time was kind of high early, went down for a while, and picked back up late. And remember, UVA hit that skid. They were really on a roll. They went to FSU and got blown out on a Monday night. And then they lost a few games in a row. Then they had a pause. When they came back from the pause, Justin was getting a lot more playing time. And if you go back and look at Tony Bennett pressers and stuff like that, he was talking about the importance of sticking him in the game. And boom, gives them energy, gives them grit. Some guys are energy because they're bouncy. Some guys are grit just because that's who they are. He was the combination of energy and grit, and was very important in that sense. So I think that he can at least bring that to North Carolina. I think we'll see a little bit more offensive skill than maybe was seen at Virginia, and I think we'll see a guy who can defend the perimeter. He can defend as his guy gets closer to the basket, and he'll be able to defend on the blocks. A lot of people are really worried about how Carolina's going to defend the blocks with stretch guys and only one true back to the basket guy down there. But I think that Justin McCoy can serve in that role as well. So if Armando gets in foul trouble and the stretch 4 guys aren't getting it done defensively down there, and I think that they're going to be better than people think, Justin McCoy could be used in that role.
Definitely. And I'm glad you mentioned defensive versatility that he offers. And, maybe make no mistakes about it. If you're averaging 11.3 minutes at Virginia as a sophomore, you got to be able to defend. I mean, that's a program that prides itself on playing defense. So he's a guy that's got to have the ability to go out there and defend guys. And you talked about him bringing energy and stuff like that. So, like you mentioned, maybe not a guy that's going to give you 20 and 11, but when you add his versatility, when you add what he can do, you add that he can also shoot the ball a little bit, but he can also step out and defend guys down low, outside a little bit. I mean, that versatility in itself and what he can offer on the defensive end in particular, I think, is a big asset for this team. So I think the last thing I want to ask you before, we go ahead and wrap this one up, you've already touched on it a little bit and based on our overall discussion, but looking at next year's team, you're thinking about Justin McCoy as a guy that, like I said, what he brings on defensive end, the versatility that he has, maybe just being kind of a guy that can come in and fill holes and be that role player. He's not going to be some dominant scorer, but
let's also remember let's think about the new lease on life element here too.
a good point. Yeah.
Guys leave for a reason, and new lease on life factor could allow for more of his game to come out. And let's also note that we're recording this before any other decisions are made with potential transfers who could be big guys.
So you never know.
Some of his minutes, so we don't really know. However, if he's put in a position where he has to play 15 minutes a game, as an example, for the sake of discussion, they could be fine. He can handle it. He's the same size that Luke May was.
Mm-hmm.
And people were comfortable with Luke defending in the block. He wasn't a great defender, but he was pretty solid. Luke could score in the block too. I'm not saying that Justin McCoy is Luke May, but people think of him too much as a guy that's perimeter oriented. He only attempted 9 threes last year.
Mm-hmm.
He attempted 58 shots and 9 of them were threes. He's a guy that's comfortable down low. He's comfortable, muckraking the cutters going through the lane. He's comfortable, getting a body on a guy posting up on the blocks. He's not super long, but so much that if you could push a guy off the block a little bit to catch the entry, you're going to affect his move. You don't always have to be long and block the shot and that kind of thing. There are other ways to do that. Mm-hmm. Justin has those abilities. So that's the role he's going to play. Mm-hmm. And if there is more to his offensive arsenal than we've seen so far, we'll see that come out at North Carolina.
Definitely. And you mentioned new lease on life too before we wrap this one up. I mean, different system as well. I mean, you talk about two contrasting systems and what Carolina likes to run, at least under Roy Williams. We'll see what kind of Hubert exactly wants to do once we get a little bit deeper into it. But
they're not going to be slower under Hubert. Trust me.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be very similar.
Hubert ain't pulling that thing back, man.
No, not especially not like Tony Bennett. Sheesh.
You're going to see more catch and shoot threes in transition than you've ever seen before.
Exactly. But you never know. That system in itself.
You might see a coach that's okay with quicker. Before first TV timeout, if they attempted 6 shots and 4 were threes, you knew what Roy was telling them.
Oh, yeah.
Get that thing through the post.
Yeah, come on, guys.
You might be okay with 4 threes out of your first 6 shots. We'll have to wait and see. But I think he'll be very comfortable with Justin McCoy handling moments that are really important in games because he's done it before.
Yeah,
and he didn't do it a lot in Virginia, but he did it. Mm-hmm. And a new lease on life factor, a new place, new responsibilities. I think that he'll be fine at North Carolina, whatever role that he's given.
Definitely. And, make no mistakes about it. Hubert Davis and the staff, one of the first guys they got him, not the first. I mean, if you're going after a guy like that, you want him. You obviously see something that he can bring to the program, and he obviously fits the system and thing you're trying to build, especially in your first year as a head coach like that. So, yeah, I mean, I think Justin McCoy is going to be a guy to continue to watch, but I think he's a guy that definitely adds something to this team, both on the offensive and defensive side of the floor. And like you mentioned, he's done it before. He's played in the ACC for a couple of years. Obviously didn't play a ton, but he's done it. He's been there, and that's super important.
298 minutes at Virginia.
Yeah, 298 more than, a freshman coming in, for instance. So that experience is invaluable, especially when you consider going on the road, playing in arenas. Been there, done that kind of guy. You know how it goes. So, yeah, I think Justin McCoy's a great addition to this program. It'll be interesting to see as we get closer and into the thick of the season, what his role's like, how it changes, and what kind of numbers he puts up as a Tar Heel. But, yeah, no reason to think he can't come in and really be a solid addition to this North Carolina team. So, yeah, I think it's a good place to wrap this one up, AJ. The Justin McCoy edition of the UNC Basketball ISO Series we've been running out over the past few months. Like I mentioned earlier, if you haven't seen those, football and basketball included, check out the playlist on the front of our channel, and you can find all those linked in there. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. As always, guys, make sure you head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Sign up for just $8.33 a month for premium access. Again, a great time to do it. Like, share, hit that notification bell, subscribe to our channel. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Thanks.